friends, Uncle Marv here, and we are having another episode of the Unhealthy Podcast. Basically, my journey into turning my life from an unhealthy mess to a healthy masterpiece. And as you have heard me talk about in previous shows, it's not just about health and fitness. It's about mental health. It's about sleep. It's about work-life balance. It's about a lot of things. And today we are going to be talking about another one of those things. I have with me today Naomi D. Williams, who is a life doula, hope coach, and professional adapter. Naomi, how are you?
I am excellent. Hello, Uncle Marv. I'm happy to be here with you today. Thank you.
Okay. So when I say those titles that you have, I think most people have heard of coach. Some people have heard of doula, but I don't think anybody's ever heard of the phrase professional adapter. So why don't we start with that?
Absolutely. As you think about, as I think about my life and how I would introduce myself to people, Naomi, what do you do? What is your job? What is your title? And I have I have degrees, health educator, I have certifications, all of these things. But the one that stands out to me the most is being a professional adapter, learning how. I don't like change. Let me just say that. I am not a fan of change.
Most of us don't.
Right? But change is the one thing that stays the same. And so my life, I am the proud parent of a 14-year-old who is completely dependent. And there are a lot of things that are outside of my control. And, I have a plan and it goes haywire most of the time. And so learning how to adapt and adapt well, maintaining the attitude, which I'm still working on that. But, learning how to be flexible and how to adapt and where it does not completely crumble your entire day, let alone week or month, takes skill.
Now, when our pre-chats, we probably did not talk about how much I would be allowed to ask and what you'd be comfortable disclosing. So we should probably ask just for a little bit of clarification in terms of you have a 14-year-old that has needs. Is this physical needs? Is this mental needs? What exactly is the area?
All of the above. So
okay.
My son was born at 26 weeks gestation. So he came extremely early. I was sick and it had gone undiagnosed and late diagnosed. So I had preeclampsia, I had HELP syndrome. So I nearly lost my life and my son was born dead. That was my introduction to parenthood. And so his umbrella diagnosis is cerebral palsy. And then he has a whole laundry list of other diagnoses that come up under that. So his name is Noah. And Noah and I have conversations. He is a train wreck on paper, and he is not that paper. And so we acknowledge the disabilities. We acknowledge the limitations that he does have based off of the trauma that he has sustained. And we focus on what he can do and how he and we can live our best life despite these challenges.
Okay. So I understand just a little bit. I do have some family history in my family where we've had some children that are on the spectrum. And so you can't necessarily count on things going the way that they should go in our minds. So I'm familiar with that a little bit, obviously not with everything. But I think a lot of us, listeners included, people around us that we've run into, the world's changed where we are dealing with a whole lot more in a more public way, I guess is the best way to describe it. Do you see that happening?
Yes, because we are, because laws and policies are changing. So at one point in time, you most likely would not see my son as a child, a teenager, and especially not as an adult, because they would be children like him, individuals like him would be institutionalized typically. So it's, oh, they have whatever, put them away. They're not a part of society. And as we evolve, it's, and we have learned that people do best in their natural environments, and they are individuals and they do have value, and community, is the better, home and community is the better, environment. So you do run into families like mine. So my son does not talk. He does not walk. He's different, and we're all different. And so I work to highlight, yes, we are different, and that's okay. Different doesn't mean less than. So you might see somebody out and their child is on the spectrum and they're having a tantrum. It doesn't mean that they don't have, it's not that they're bad kids. So learning how it comes back to professional adapting, learning to see situations for what they are, and working to not be judgmental, and to see how we can learn about those that are around us.
So you mentioned some scenarios that I myself remember. I will, without giving my age, talk about the times where growing up, ADD and ADHD were not a thing. And if you had something that resembled that, your parents beat you, disciplined you to control it.
Right.
And the children that were able to be out and about and functioning, if they were having some sort of disability, there was a special class for them. So there was always this segmenting away from normal society. So I remember those days. And
that still happens, unfortunately.
Yeah. So let me go back now to the other part of your history. So Life Doula, Hope Coach. Was there some sort of path that you fell into because of your situation, or are these things that you were doing before and it just amplified when you had Noah?
So it's both and. Yes, and. So I operated as a health educator. That's my background in education. So I've worked in settings of being a community liaison, working to help people navigate systems. And then when I had my son and found myself in the same scenarios that I was helping other parents in, and it was just magnified, it thrust me into a place of, this is really hard to navigate. There's really no one there to help streamline it. And more than that, there's no one there to provide support. And so becoming a life doula, as you mentioned, people say you may know the term of doula. And so I don't help with birthing anyone or postpartum. There's a new term, end of life doula. And so that's someone who helps navigate through the transition at end of life. But so a doula is someone that supports you. And so myself as a life doula, I support people who are going through major life altering events. And so whether it could be a death, it could be a medical diagnosis for themselves or for their child. And you don't tend to get a lot of support. You get it at the beginning and maybe at the end, but in it, you don't. When you're having to fill out hundreds of pages of paperwork to get the support that you need to raise your child or to access medical treatment or care. And you get the runaround, the emotional, mental toll that it takes on you on top of continuing to work, continuing to be, if you're a spouse, a parent, all of those things aren't taken into consideration. You're just told to do. So that's where the life doula comes in. And then the hope coach, I'm a grief coach also by education. And I have learned people don't like to talk about grief. We don't talk about our losses. We don't really recognize loss and grief outside of death. And so instead of talking about grief in that way, I talk about hope. Because when you have a conversation and you're told your child most likely will not live, and if they do, they're going to be completely dependent their entire life. They're not going to be able to eat or walk or talk or crawl. Or if you get a diagnosis of cancer, you don't really hear what the doctor says after that. And you go into this, well, my life is over. And it's not that your life is over. You have to grieve those expectations that you had, what your life was going to look like. And then let's pivot, let's adapt and see what is the life that I can create despite these circumstances.
So right at the very end, you mentioned cancer. And that's another area that I can understand. So just over a year ago, my mom was diagnosed with multiple myeloma. And when she got the diagnosis, it was pretty much, yeah, here's what you have. Here's our course of treatment. And here's the expectancy of life. That was it. And myself and my two sisters then had to be there to figure out, okay, what do we do? And there, for some reason, was not a lot of education that was available to her. And I have to thank my sister, who actually did a ton of research and helped us find a community where we were able to get some of that. So a lot of what you just said about all these things with, events in our lives and sicknesses in our lives, unless you're falling right in the middle of what the doctors say or what the professionals say, if you deviate off of their plan, there's no help for people out there.
There's Naomi. No, I say that jokingly, but seriously too. But you're so right. You're given this information, and it's almost like on the medical side, okay, we've done our part, and then you're left to figure it out. And you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And you don't know what questions to ask if you haven't been down this road before, And so that's what I do. And again, before having my son, I did this work well, but in a different way. After having him and learning how to advocate for him, to get the resources that we need. So I work with others to share that. Here are questions that would be helpful for you to ask. And this is how you ask them. I always talk to his physicians, talk to me, explain it to me like I'm 5. It's not dumbing it down. It's a lot of information. It's new. I get overwhelmed easily, and I want to be able to understand it. Repeating the same thing the same way is not helpful. So, can we find some different vocabulary words to use to where I understand that? One tip I always will share is when doctors ask, do you have any other questions for me? And I will say, well, you see more people in this situation than I have. So what questions have you heard that I should be asking? or that I haven't asked. And that gets them to thinking, right? And it's about you having conversation, relation, and looking at what is important to you. So just because I have a diagnosis, and yes, it's life altering, doesn't mean my life is over, which is a lot of times the picture that is painted. So working to see, okay, now I have this diagnosis, or I've found myself in this situation. I've been married for X number of years, and, my partner and I are divorcing or separating or whatever the case may be. How do I continue living my best life? How do I process the feelings that I have? Who can I share this with that is not going to be judgmental and consider committing me? And so being able to have honest, open, transparent conversations to feeling those feelings so you can heal, so you can get on to your business of living your best life now.
Well, since you mentioned that phrase, I will go back now, and we talked about who you are and what you do. You have a website, exceptionalliving101.org.
Yes.
And from there, I gather that it is your mission to empower individuals and families to live their best life. Now, all the things that we described for the past 15 minutes usually don't lend themselves to being a part of what people consider their best life. It's usually the darkest times or, grief times and stuff. So is your site, when you talk about having people live their best lives, is it to kind of turn around their situation like you did with Noah, to where, hey, this is the lot we're given. We don't have to accept what is on paper or what the expectations are. We can live the best way that we can and be exceptional at it.
When you say the word accept, so when you come to my website and when you engage with me, you meet Naomi. I kind of put myself out there, and it's accepting what is. I can't change my son's diagnoses. I can't fix him. I can't make him better, or quote unquote, what people would call normal. I say typical. He is who he is. He doesn't need to be fixed. What I can do is honor what I thought my life was going to look like. I can grieve what those expectations were and still are. I grieve every day because my life is not your typical life. There are things that I will never be or see or accomplish, and that's okay. By not acknowledging those things and accepting them is what takes us into and keeps us in a place of despair and stuck. And so when you come to my site, or when you work with Naomi D. Williams, when you work with me, we go through the process. We talk about what it is that you wanted, where you are. And then we look at, okay, we can't change that. I don't have control over that. What do I have control over? I have control over my attitude. My signature line says, choose joy. And I've been using that for probably 2 years now. And it's a reminder that I have a choice of how I look at things and how I choose to move or not move. I have a choice, right? And so when working together, it's looking to see and feel and grieve, learning how to grieve our losses, how to recognize losses. 2020, everybody was grieving. The world was on a level playing field. And I felt in 2020, like people got a glimpse into my world because we all lost our normal. Right. We all lost our typical, right? But many people couldn't put their finger on why they felt the way they did. They didn't recognize losing their normal as grief. And so being able to identify what grief looks like, how that makes you feel, and then how do you process it? Because grief is cyclical. It comes in cycles. It comes in waves. It hits you when you least expect it. And so I work a lot with how do you cope through that? What are your coping mechanisms? What tools? I work to add tools into your toolbox, because the same hammer, and let me say screwdriver, you're not going to be able to use a flathead interchangeably with a Phillips, right? So what is it that you need to get to where you want to be? And you may not be able to say, Naomi, I need X, Y, and Z. And so we come in from the garage door and say, okay, well, what don't you need? What don't you want? So I work with people to look at it from a lot of different ways to be able to get to a place where they are comfortable with themselves and getting back to what you feel like is your normal or new beginning.
So I want to kind of ask you about the phrase that you said where there are things that you will never be. But I want to go back a little further because I want to see if this is something that, what was your trajectory of life when you first started? You had already mentioned that your background is in health education. So you were already helping people navigate things. So what was your trajectory back then?
It's hard to think of what I expected my life to be back then. I would say it was to be a successful professional, to be married, to have children, if that was something that was on our path, to be good and comfortable and living my best life, having fun, being able to enjoy my children or child, traveling, going to sporting events, cheering them on, and whether it was soccer or basketball or, those kind of things, being able to leave them with friends or family and go on vacation, kid free, those kind of things. And, yeah.
When it comes to work, though, did you have aspirations for work? Were you looking to be, was this, education in like the college sense? Did you want to be a professor? Were you trying to do those types of things, public speaking?
More than likely, yes. And again, I've not been on that path for so long. It's hard to say. I want to say yes. I think one of my aspirations was to have letters behind my name because that signified, you knew stuff, and that would be the way to climb the ladder, the professional ladder. Professor, I don't know if that was ever before I had my son. No, after I had him, that was something that I thought I wanted to do and be.
That's interesting. Why after and not before?
That's a good question. I can say I don't know why before. I can say after. It was being in the medical field and experiencing and walking through what I was with him, knowing if I could reach people while they were learning in undergrad and graduate school, to be able to help shape and reconfigure some of their mindset.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. And after having my son, professionally, and I even struggle with this now. There are things that I want to do. There are opportunities that I feel that I don't have, in the sense of being able to do more public speaking and going to places because of the lack of support that we have. And with that, I am learning how to change that. You know, again, COVID opened the door for so many things, and everything doesn't have to be in person. And so how do you connect virtually? You can reach more people virtually than you necessarily can in person. And it has also helped me learn how to figure hard things out. And what I mean by that is, I left my son last year with a trusted caregiver for 12 days, and I went on to the other side of the world. I went to Bali. And my son is medically fragile. He's medically complex. I didn't have a backup caregiver. There was no one who, you know, if something happened, it's not like I can hop on a plane and I'll be home in 12 hours or 5 hours. It was a straight leap of faith. And you know what? Stuff happened. He didn't have to go to the hospital. He was good. Other things happened, and they figured it out. And so it's one of those things. So I'm sharing this because I am actively living what I work with people through. Naomi is still, there is no destination. It's a journey. And so one of the neonatologists, one of our first family conversations, one of the greatest gifts he gave me was, you have to find joy through your journey. Find joy through the journey. And the journey isn't always pretty. Hence comes the professional adapter.
Okay. Now, trying to define what you do, and I mentioned earlier that, you know, a lot of people have heard doula before, and it was the traditional birthing scenario that we knew. That's what I knew. I didn't realize that there was a life doula, and then you mentioned the end of life doula. But the hope coach and everything else. So there's a part of me that wants to ask you, like, what are some of the misconceptions that people see in what you do, and how do you address those?
I work to address misconceptions and or obstacles up front. And so some of those misconceptions are, I'm a counselor and I'm going to fix it for you, or I'm going to tell you what to do and how to do. And that's not what this work is. And I say work because you have to do the work, right? It's your life. I give people the space to talk through where they are and to get the ahas on their own. So working with me would look like, and there are different facets of being able to, of how I work with various people. So let me just give an example of one client. They came to me and they were on the verge of eviction, sustained a lot of trauma. They were currently unemployed, had a lot of family challenges, employment challenges, work challenges, just all kind of things. And started out with, okay, what is the plan? What is it that you want? What are you looking for? What do you need? And I listened for an hour and I took notes, and then I cleaned them up and I send them back and say, this is what I heard. We celebrate the wins, because when you're facing eviction, there's a lot not going right or well, right, going on in your life. but we always find and we celebrate the wins. So that comes in with your hope to be able to say, you know what, I am doing something right. I have done something, and we celebrate. Could be as simple as, what is your favorite color? And that's the color that your wins come back in. So there's a lot of working with our psyche. We go through, and as we're going through, if you're getting tense, if I see, your body movement, we take a pause and we breathe. I incorporate yoga. I'm a yoga instructor. So we incorporate breathing, incorporate movement. And so these are tools that you gain how to use when Naomi isn't there. When you're there by yourself, it's like, oh, okay, I can stop, I can breathe, I can move, these kind of things. And as the more we work, I say the more we work together, you drive the ship. So this particular client, we were working together every week. They did end up being evicted. They did not end up homeless or in a homeless shelter. They became extremely resourceful. They did not rob or steal from anybody. They got very resourceful. We looked at, where are places that we can go? Where can we get supports? We worked on budget. And Naomi I'm not creating this. It's tell me what you have. You write it down and looking at it. And a lot of times it's just a matter of taking chaos and putting order to it. And so the success for where this person is now, and I'm so proud of them. We've been working together for 9 months. They went from every week to every other week to once a month. And then they started missing their sessions, and they sent a message and said, you know what? I realize I have a block here. I think it's because X, Y, and Z. So I want to take some time off, regroup, get these things together. And then I'll come back in 2 months. I'm working 2 jobs. I have stable housing, X, Y, and Z. I celebrated so much with this person. Are they where we would think and say that that's successful? Most people wouldn't. I do, because they have stable housing. They have 2 jobs. They're managing their money, right? So they're and able to articulate, okay, Naomi, this is there's a block here. Some things aren't working. I want to figure that out, and then I'll come back. And so being able to say this, to honor what it is that they need, that's huge. It's huge. It doesn't seem like a big deal to others. It may not, but it's huge when you can honor yourself and what it is that you need, regardless of the judgment that you have, and to be able to live your best life, whatever that looks like for you, is amazing. So it's being able to take chaos and help to put some order to it, but it's you doing it. So and I know this sounds like a long-winded answer. It's going to sound crazy, maybe. My intent is not to have somebody with me forever. I want to help you get to a point where you don't need me, where if you want to come for maintenance or check-in, great. But it's to a place where it's okay. I have the tools that I need. I know how to celebrate myself. I know how to advocate for me. When I get stuck, Naomi is there. That I have these tools to help me see what is important to me and how to live my best life.
So a lot of what you just said reminds me of this journey that I've been on with this podcast, and getting to a place where, healthy is different for everybody. Living your best life is different for everybody. And getting a person to a place where they are okay. And like you mentioned, they felt comfortable in the space that they were in, except for maybe one area, and they acknowledged it, but it didn't stop them and didn't, define them. before you started that, I was going off on a thought, and I apologize for this, because when we were talking about the misconceptions, I feel like society right now has this mindset where, and I don't want to say it's the young kids, I mean, it's a lot of people where they just want to hear you tell them what to do or how to feel. It's like, okay, I know I'm going through this, but just tell me what I got to do to get past it. And you mentioned that, listen, you got to do the work. I can't do the work for you.
Yeah. Yes.
So that was very powerful there. Now, also, I wanted to ask this question in a way that was tender enough, because you're dealing with your own personal stuff, yet you're helping other people going through their stuff, their grief, their tribulations, trials. How do you balance that to where you're helping others, but yet you've also got to make sure you're helping yourself?
That's an excellent question. I do my work. I do my work. Naomi still has work. So I still have a counselor that I meet on a regular basis. I have a lot of tools in my toolbox. So I listen to my body and what it is that it's asking for. I give myself space to grieve. So what that looks like, to try and give some tangible and to not be so woo and, earthy with this. So what it looks like, I was doing my work before getting into providing this work. And so what I do now is, like I said, I maintain. So I had some life events happen. I was doing maintenance with my counselor like once a month, once every 3 weeks, and some life happened, and I said, hey, I need to bump this up to once a week. So I have a space to process what I am going through. I take time outs. And I'm particular with who I work with as well, depending on, we feel each other out. Am I a good fit for you? Or are you a good fit for me? Because I only have so much energy and I don't waste my energy. Right. And I pour back in to myself. So I've learned how to honor Naomi and give her what she needs, whether that's a day off, whether that's vegging in front of the TV or on the couch, going kayaking, going for a walk, getting on my yoga mat, whatever that is, getting together with some friends, whatever that is.
Now, you mentioned that, you're available should somebody need guidance in this. And we talked at the beginning about how most of the time when people find out that they're going through something, whether it's a unexpected death or an illness that they're diagnosed with, there usually isn't a resource right there where they can find the assistance. So is there kind of like a community aspect to what you do? Like, do you know others out there, in short of people finding this podcast and me directing them to your page and stuff? How do people run into people like you that can help?
A lot of times it's word of mouth, in the sense of, so one, you have to be willing to say, I need X, or to ask for that help. And a lot of times we don't. Some places will have navigators. So let me say it like this. There are a lot of resources that are out there, but people don't know about them because there's no like one-stop shop to find them. You would think in a healthcare setting, you have navigators. Sometimes they do really well. Sometimes they don't. with death from a hospital. Some have resource lists and will automatically give it to you. Others you have to beg or ask for it. So what I have found is people being willing to talk and say what it is that they need, and having people in their lives who can hear them without judgment, and then being willing to seek that information out. So example, whenever I learn of somebody that has a new diagnosis or has a major life altering event, I will suggest a support group to them. And it's just a matter of putting that information. Here's a support group that you can join. They're here every Monday at 12 o'clock. Doesn't matter what your loss is. Here's the information you can join. So people knowing about what's there and available, and then others have to be willing to get there. When I say get there, being willing to show up for themselves.
So I know I asked about how do people, find these resources. Obviously, when it comes to you, we talked about your website, exceptionalliving101.org. And if somebody's listening to this and wants to know more about you, that's where they can go, contact you. I had a bunch of other questions that I thought I would ask, but I like where this went in explaining your history, explaining what you do. Is there something in particular that maybe you want to share with the listeners in helping them better understand what a hope coach and life doula can do?
One thing I do want to share, I will be hosting a processing through the basis of grief course it's a 7-week course starting on August 13th. That's a Sunday. So it'll be seven Sundays starting at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can go to my website or email me for more information. And that course is actually taking people through how do you process through grief, not once, but that cycle, right? And knowing that it's okay to not be okay. Let me just say that it's okay to not be okay. And it's okay to be okay, but we don't talk about, we tend to hold our not being okay in. It's okay to ask for help. We will seek out help if our head hurts, if our body aches, if we've gotten into an accident. But from the mental, psychological side, we need help there too. And that's okay. So as a hope coach and as a life doula, knowing that you have somebody in your corner who will support you, who will, for lack of a better word, hold your hand through the process, who will laugh with you, who will cry with you, who might cuss with you. I mean, I'm just gonna keep it real. Someone who will listen to you and help you figure out what's important to you and how you can go about keeping that at the forefront of all the other mess that might be going on.
All right. So the grief course, and you can find that on the website. There's actually a tab there called Grief Course, and you can go there and sign up. And this isn't like some course where you're going to be in there with hundreds of people. This is a very specific course. It's going to be limited. So head over and make sure you get your spot.
Yep. 10 people. It's intimate. We build a community.
All right. Well, Naomi, I thank you for spending some time with me. I look forward to our next visit because I don't think this will be a one-time thing.
I hope not. I have thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I hope to see some of you all, to connect with you. If nothing else, just pop on the website and say, hey, Naomi.
All right, Naomi, the mission to empower individuals and families to live their best life, Exceptional Living 101. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Have a great day.
All right, folks, and we'll be back with another episode soon. And on the way out, I want to remind you to live healthy, be happy, and we'll see you down the road. Bye for now.